Today, we're going to talk about one of the oldest and most mysterious characters in the Marvel Universe, Agatha Harkness. Though it was only recently that Agatha entered the mainstream through her appearance in Marvel shows like Agatha All Along and WandaVision, she's been a key character in comics for quite some while now. Thus, in this marvelous video, we'll explore the entirety of Agatha's extremely long life in order to catch a glimpse of the witch's darkest secrets. However, before we move on, please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It might just be a small click for you, but to us, it means an awful lot. With that out of the way, let's begin. Agatha Harkness, origins of the Enchantress, the early life and mystical beginnings. Despite her numerous appearances over the years, Agatha's origins are still something of a mystery. For one thing, no one knows how old she actually is, but it's been implied that she's been around for many, many centuries. Agatha was created by the prolific artistic duo of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and made her comic debut back in 1970 on the pages of Fantastic Four number 94. When Agatha was first introduced, she served as a governess for the Omega-level mutant Franklin Richards. She seemed to be just a sweet old woman, but eventually we'd see that she had a lot going on beyond her day job. As her story progressed, we learned that the sweet old lady was actually an ancient and extremely powerful witch. Then, many years later, with the story arc Witch Hunts and the New World, fans would finally get something like an origin story for Agatha. It all began in 1428 in the Eastern European country of Transia. Here, we find Agatha and her coven being attacked by an angry mob hell-bent on slaughtering them. The witches are trying to implement a protection spell to guard themselves from the mob. However, it seems to fail repeatedly. Among the coven were the ancestors of the magicians Nico Minoru and Zoe Laveau, whom Agatha would encounter later in her life. As the story progresses, we learn that the spell would require the sacrifice of the youngest member of the coven, Karina, to the interdimensional being known as Valtor. Agatha ends up turning against Laveau for her extreme measures and takes it upon herself to protect the young Karina from Valtor. For many years, Agatha worked tirelessly to protect Karina from Laveau, who was never really able to defeat the dreaded Valtor. We then move ahead a couple of centuries to discover that Agatha has moved to the New World, that is, the United States of America. She'd come to settle down in the quaint little town of Salem, Massachusetts, where she would form her own coven and continue practicing her magic in peace. However, as you can probably expect, Salem and magic don't really go well together, and Agatha's practice would inevitably lead to the Salem witch trials. Despite the persecution, Agatha approved of the trials as she believed that they'd only make her coven stronger by testing the witch's skills. It was during this time that Agatha was approached by the time-traveling Angelica Jones, aka Firestar, who taught Agatha that warfare wasn't the right path for her coven. This realization would lead Agatha to uproot her coven and move to Colorado, where she founded the town of New Salem. In New Salem, Agatha would end up getting married and conceived a son whom she named Nicholas Scratch. As longtime fans would undoubtedly know, Scratch would go on to become a terrifyingly powerful magician in his own right. That's a story for another time. Now, with Agatha's origins a bit clearer, I guess we can finally embark on a brief journey through her story arcs. Agatha Harkness, Master of Magic, exploring her major story arcs. Over the years, Agatha would end up cultivating quite a reputation as a responsible and loving governess. Due to these qualities, Reed Richards and Sue Storm would end up hiring the witch as a nanny for their son, Franklin Richards. Due to her magical abilities, Agatha was able to consistently keep the young mutant out of trouble and protect the kid on multiple occasions. This sparked the formation of a strong bond between Franklin and Agatha, which would only keep flourishing as the years went by. Over time, Agatha became an integral part of Marvel's first family and helped the Fantastic Four through her prophetic warnings regarding threats like Overmind and Airwalker. She sheltered the family when New York City was invaded by Atlanteans and even rescued Reed from the negative zone. She was also indispensable in the war effort against Ultron, as it was her work with Franklin's powers that caused the killer robot's defeat. Agatha stayed by the Fantastic Four until their fight with Ultron, where the team joined hands with the Avengers. It was here that Agatha first saw the extent of Scarlet Witch's abilities, which led to her claiming that Franklin no longer required her. After convincing Wanda to take over as Franklin's teacher, Agatha finally went off on her own. Later, we'd learn that Agatha's son, Nicholas Scratch, had fathered 7 children during her time away. Each of these mutated children grew into an extremely powerful magician, and the group gained a notorious reputation as Salem 7. With Seven's help, Nicholas was able to easily take over the town of New Salem, and even convince the townsfolk that Agatha had abandoned them for the Fantastic Four. Angered by this, the townspeople kidnapped both Franklin and Agatha in order to put them on trial. As expected, this didn't go down well with the Fantastic Four, who barged into New Salem to rescue Agatha and Franklin. After trying, the Fantastic Four and Agatha are able to reveal Scratch's true nature to the residents of New Salem, who end up banishing him. Despite this, the Salem Seven would remain a significant threat to Agatha and even manage to take over the town again. They kidnapped Agatha once more, and this time they were even able to put their grandmother on trial. Agatha got burned at the stake, but here, kidnapping was able to catch the attention of both Wanda and Vision. Though Agatha had already perished by the time Wanda and Vision got to New Salem, we all know by now that nothing really dies in comics. During the fight with Agatha's grandkids, Wanda ends up consuming some dark magic that had sowed the seeds of the twin kids she'd conjure for her and Vision to parent. It had later be revealed that the magic Wanda consumed was actually created from pieces of Mephisto's soul. Later, in this arc, Mephisto reabsorbs the twins, which leads to Wanda's complete mental breakdown. Seeing her pupil distressed, Agatha was inexplicably resurrected and tried to wipe Wanda's memory to protect her from the pain. But Agatha's spell had gone wrong, and Wanda's fragile mind was left completely fractured. By the time Avenger Disassembled began, Agatha had already died once at the hands of her former pupil, the Scarlet Witch. Due to Wanda's nervous breakdown, she became increasingly more dangerous, which led to Agatha confronting her student. But Wanda's mind was already lost, and a feral Scarlet Witch would end up slaying Agatha. For a little while following this event, we'd not hear anything about Agatha until she inevitably returned during the storyline of Resurrection. That's quite a perfect name for the arc when you think about it. Well, Agatha would finally be resurrected when her spirit was forced to come to Wanda's aid while the latter was investigating a magical illness. By teaming up with Wanda's biological mother, Natalia, Agatha was able to take on the abstract entity known only as Chaos, who sought to kill the goddess of witchcraft. Though Chaos's defeat led to Natalia's untimely demise, both Agatha and Wanda were able to make a safe return to the land of the living. Due to her fondness for teaching and magic, Agatha would take up a position at the Strange Academy. This school, founded by Dr. Strange, was designed to prepare the next generation of magic users. It was here that Zoe Laveau and Nico Minoru, who had both descended from the members of Agatha's original coven. One day, all the magic users in the universe would share an apocalyptic vision that predicted that the end of the world would come around the young Zoe. Soon after this, Vapor Goons arrive at the academy to attack Zoe, and Agatha manages to save the young witch at the very last moment. Agatha snuck Zoe into an old safe house, where she told the young witch how her old coven had made the mistake of summoning Valtor. We eventually learn that Zoe's attacker is none other than Valtor's original victim, Karina, who had taken up the identity of Corrosion. Karina had succeeded in slaying Valtor and had now returned to complete her quest for vengeance. With the help of a magic mirror, Agatha and Zoe are able to establish contact with an old spirit rider, Kushala, who had been trapped in Valtor's demonic realm. By the end of this arc, Agatha would form the paranormal team Midnight Suns, which began investigating the apocalyptic vision that started the whole thing. Eventually, Agatha would come in contact with Midnight Suns from alternate realities, all of whom were also fighting corrosion in their own realities. With the help of all the heroes, especially Zoe and a variant of Nico, Agatha was able to create an anchor in the present, which allowed the Midnight Suns to jump from their reality to Valtor's realm in order to defeat him. She also created a magical dagger with which she stabbed Corrosion, causing both the witches to disappear. Agatha was presumed dead after the encounter. However, she wasn't only alive, but had been restored to her physical prime. We next saw Agatha in the Contest of Chaos storyline, where Wanda bonded with the Darkhold in an attempt to imprison Chthon. This led Agatha to forge a new Darkhold by stealing Chthon's heart and using it as a conduit to protect the world from pure chaos. In order to achieve this, she operated from the mysterious Bermuda Triangle, where she pitted various heroes against each other to generate and contain chaos magic, which would leave the winner of the face-offs in Agatha's control. These heroes, who took up the title Agents of Chaos, included Wolverine, Storm, Human Torch, Taguchi, White Fox, Venom, and Cyclops. The capture of these heroes eventually drew the attention of the Avengers, who tracked Agatha to the Bermuda Triangle. When the Earth's mightiest heroes appeared on the scene, they witnessed all the sunken ships from the Bermuda Triangle rise up, with each carrying one of the mind-controlled heroes. A brutal battle ensued between the controlled heroes and the Avengers, but the Avengers persevered and entered the whirlpool at the center of the triangle, where Agatha was just about to finish the second edition of the Darkhold. Wanda and Carol Danvers made it to Agatha, but the moment Carol touched the Darkhold, a great energy surge was released, which allowed Agatha to escape. We later find Agatha on an unknown beach, where she's greeted by a young boy who's basically the Darkhold in human form. For many months after this incident, Agatha pretended to be the young Darkhold's mother. Together, they traveled the whole world while trying to keep a low profile. As time went by, Agatha grew more and more possessive about the boy, which led to him running away. Due to his innate magical prowess, Darkhold was able to easily hide from Agatha's tracking spells. But somehow, Agatha's former students from the Strange Academy were able to track Darkhold during an encounter with the vampiric cult, the Structure. When Agatha attempted to get back to Darkhold, the boy tried to teleport away, but the experienced witch managed to keep up, cast a spell that conjured doppelgangers that surrounded Darkhold. All this time, the Strange Academy stood vehemently against the idea of Agatha attacking Darkhold, which prompted them to defend the boy from many of Agatha's doubles. With Agatha distracted, Darkhold was able to knock the witch out with a single shot that forced her to retreat. However, we're pretty certain that we'll see much more of Agatha Harkness going forward, as she's become an integral part of the Marvel Universe, especially on the magical side of things. Now that we've gone through much of Agatha's comic book storyline, let's turn to her on-screen adventures.
For ladies like us, Wanda.
Agatha Harkness in MCU explored the events of WandaVision. Agatha's origin in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is actually pretty similar to that in the comic, at least in terms of the setting. In the MCU, Agatha starts out as a witch and a former member of the Salemites. In the year 1693, Harkness is caught by the rest of her coven while stealing and practicing forbidden magic, which prompts the witches to hold her captive. At the peak of the Salem witch trials, Harkness is dragged through woods and is forced to stand trial while bound to a wood post. We're also introduced to Agatha's mother, Evanora Harkness, who reaffirms the existence of witches before proclaiming her own daughter guilty. As punishment, the Coven of Witches blasts Agatha with an insane amount of energy until Agatha literally begins to plead in front of her mother. Agatha continued to writhe in agony until her own powers were awakened due to the unimaginable stress. Breaking free of the wooden posts, Agatha would then continue to slaughter the rest of the witches, including her mother. Before finally escaping, Agatha steals the brooch off of her mother's corpse, marking the arrival of an extremely powerful new witch. Some years after this event, Agatha would meet another witch named Rio Vidal. Agatha and Rio would fall madly in love, with Agatha even giving birth to a son named Nicholas Scratch. One day, Nicholas suddenly disappears, leading to rumors about Agatha trading her own son for the Darkhold. Strangely, it was also around this period that Harkness finally came to possess the Book of the Damned and used it to greatly augment her magical abilities. This would create a rift between Vidal and Agatha, which grew into a great enmity between the magicians. Agatha managed to fight Vidal for years, thanks to the powers of the Darkhold, but she'd eventually succumb to the book's influence. Agatha's corruption was marked by the darkening of her fingertips, which remains one of the most recognizable markers of the book's effect, at least in the MCU. With her newfound power, Harkness was able to gather a coven and survive the Witch's Road, with just one other magician making it back with her. Due to this, she gained a formidable reputation as the only witch to survive the road. Following this, Harkness disappeared from public consciousness, but the old witch was seen at the scenes of multiple disasters throughout the mid-20th century, like the sinking of the Titanic and the Hindenburg disaster. Agatha would return to action many decades later in the year 2023, when she sensed a baffling mixture of magical energy emanating from the small town of Westview, New Jersey. Upon arriving there, she found that their entire place seemed to exist in some alternate reality where literally everything was derived from 50s sitcoms. It wouldn't take Agatha long to figure out that the town and inhabitants were being controlled by Wanda, who was still reeling from Vision's death at the end of the Infinity Saga. Since the magic used by Wanda was greater and more effective than any of her own spells, Harkness decided to enter the anomaly. Using the Darkhold's powers, she became the only person unaffected by Wanda's influence and sneaked into the Maximoff family as a harmless neighborhood lady, Agnes. Agnes became the first neighbor in the entire place to greet Wanda and Vision after they moved into Westview. For some while, Agatha continued to play along with Wanda's delusions, even helping the Scarlet Witch prepare food for guests, which enabled her to get closer to Wanda. On one such occasion, Agatha helped Wanda and Vision perform their magic act at the Westview talent show, where she lent the couple her rabbit. She'd also introduced Wanda to the committee of fellow housewives, set up by Dottie Jones. This is where she begins dropping clues regarding the town's truth by telling Maximoff to be careful of Dottie Jones's influence in the place. Agatha was in the audience on the day of the Westview talent show, but her motives were completely wrong. We'd eventually find out that she was secretly responsible for sabotaging Vision and Wanda's magical performance. Agnes and Wanda steadily grow closer to each other, with Agnes helping Wanda buy new baby clothes. However, under all the smiles and one-liners, Harkness's dark motivations remained evident as she cast a spell on Herb Feltman to make Vision suspicious of Westview's secret and Geraldine's. Vision approached Herb and Agnes after he caught them gossiping. Upon talking to the pair, he's confronted by Feltman, who tries to explain how Geraldine has gotten into town. But before the man can betray any significant information, he's stopped by Agatha, who leads him away. After Wanda and Vision's twins are born, Agnes shows up to help the couple. Her impeccable timing arouses Vision's suspicion, which leads him to deny her help. This caused a sudden shift in Agnes's demeanor demeanor as she suddenly stopped and asked Wanda to repeat her lines from the beginning. This further confused Vision Wanda, with the latter realizing that Agnes was aware of her false reality. This caused Wanda to accept Agnes's help, which returned the witch to her original persona. When the babies aged multiple years, all of a sudden, Agnes remained unbothered and just stated that the children were inherently uncontrollable. In the next episode, Agnes would gift the couple a new doghouse after seeing that they have a new pet named Sparky. All this while, the boys continued aging incredibly fast, causing Wanda to rely on her magical abilities every once in a while. Later, Sparky manages to run away from the family home before controlling Ralph Boner into killing him. She would carry the dog's corpse to the Maximoff family, claiming that the dog had passed due to eating dirt from her azalea bushes. She would also overhear Tommy asking Wanda to resurrect the dead. She also tried to convince Wanda that she could no longer contain situations like the boys running or overturning death. In order to plant seeds of further confusion in Wanda's mind, Agatha would even get Boner to play Pietro Maximoff, giving the Fox and Marvel universes an interesting opportunity to interact. We next see Agatha on Halloween night as she's driving just outside Westview's barrier. Vision would discover Agnes's car at the furthest intersection in the town, where their neighbors seemed to be frozen in a trance. Upon being sealed by Vision, she claimed she'd made a wrong turn while driving to town square. Always perceptive, Vision picked up on the fact that Agatha seemed to have lost her way in the town she'd been living in all her life. He then used the Vision Stone to help Agatha snap out of a trance. Upon coming to her senses, Agatha seems to have regained all her real-life memories, even acknowledges Vision as one of the Avengers. Vision, however, remained oblivious to the truth, promptly denied having any knowledge of the Avengers. She even informed the android that the head had been killed during the Battle of Wakanda, which just drove Vision into further confusion. This is also the first time that Vision learns of the town's truth. However, when he puts Agatha back into her previous state, she seems to forget all about the episode and just calmly drives back to the city. As Wanda's reality began to fracture, Agatha gained more and more control over the vulnerable witch. Agatha even managed to take the kids away from Wanda after finding the latter extremely overwhelmed by her parental duties. Meanwhile, outside interference steadily increased in the town, leading to a confrontation between Wanda and Monica Rambeau. During this fight, Agnes sided with Maximoff and helped her to get rid of the authorities. Agnes also led Maximoff back to her home, where she had left the kids, but this turned out to be yet another trick. Once Wanda entered Agatha's lair, the ancient witch finally revealed her true identity to the former Avenger and mesmerized her projections and visions. Wanda tried to enter Agatha's mind in order to read it, but Agatha's protection spell proved too much for Wanda. She was able to put Wanda into magical bonds capable of holding the Scarlet Witch and began demonstrating her powers, especially the handy little skill known as transmutation. This alerted Wanda to the fact that Agatha was capable of performing these feats on a much grander scale, especially if she gained control of the hex that Wanda had employed in order to put the town in control. In the next stage of interrogation, Agatha plucked a hair from Wanda's head and used it to open a gateway into Wanda's memories, even the most tragic and unspeakable ones. Harkness also revealed that she was still in control. Wanda's children state that Tommy and Billy were still being held in a dungeon. This forced Wanda to follow Agatha through the door of memories, where she lived through some of her most traumatic experiences again and again. These memories included the death of Wanda's parents, being experimented on by Hydra, falling for Vision, and even her lifelong obsession with the near-perfect life depicted in American sitcoms. Eventually, Agatha and Wanda would arrive at the Sword headquarters, where they paid a visit to the real Vision's remains before returning to Westview. This is where Wanda realizes that the entire town is just a manifestation of her all-encompassing grief, which has tricked her into creating a new life for herself and Vision. All this while, Agatha had been taking notes and was finally able to piece Wanda's magic together. Having gained Wanda's great power, Agatha continued to emotionally torture Wanda by threatening her kids with magical nooses, while simultaneously applauding Wanda for her great use of chaos magic. Seeing her kids in danger, Wanda is unable to contain herself and attacks Agatha to release the latter's hold on Billy and Tommy. The kids rush into Vision residence to protect themselves, while Wanda takes on her greatest adversary out on the streets of Westview. During the fight, Wanda learns that Harkness is capable of completely absorbing her chaos magic, which actually takes a portion of Wanda's life force as well. In the middle of the battle, Agatha offers Scarlet Witch a strange proposal. Wanda would be allowed to have her picture-perfect life inside the Westview anomaly, but only if she willingly gave up all her chaos powers. Wanda responded by throwing a small sedan at Harkness, who managed to teleport away at the very last second. Through repeated taunts about Vision, Harkness is able to ambush Maximoff near the town square. It's here that we finally learn about the legend of the Scarlet Witch, as Agatha reveals that the Scarlet Witch is actually an absurdly powerful magical entity capable of destroying the world and even surpassing the Sorcerer Supreme. Maximoff tried to refute the legend, but Agatha responded by freeing all the residents of Westview from Wanda's influence. The townsfolk, who had been been put under total control, immediately broke down and pleaded with questions regarding their loved ones. This led Wanda to realize the severity of her actions, and she released a wave of magic that began to choke the residents of Westview. Though Wanda was quick to reverse the spell, Agatha's point had been made. Heroes don't torture people. Maximoff began destroying the anomaly, which caused the rest of her family to disintegrate. At the very last moment, Wanda stops to protect her family, but Agatha tracks them with her magic. This causes Wanda to use her chaos magic defensively, which allows Harkness the opportunity to absorb some more of the Scarlet Witch's life. Wanda used her teleportation to ambush Harkness by subjecting her to a hallucination that transported the witch back to the Salem witch trials. The corpses of Agatha's Salemite victims began to rise from the dead, but Wanda's spell backfired when the victims began to recognize her as the Scarlet Witch. The people of Salem would then tie Wanda to the stake instead of Harkness, who agrees to let her go in exchange for the chaos magic. Finally breaking out of the illusion, Wanda attacks Harkness with multiple bolts of chaos magic. As more and more of Wanda's essence is transferred to Agatha, the villain's victory seems inevitable. But when Agatha tried to use the magic against Wanda, nothing happened. Agatha realized to her horror that Wanda's attacks had just been a distraction, and the Scarlet Witch had actually taken this opportunity to cast runes on the walls of the hex, granting her supreme control of all magic in Westview. Deprived of all her powers, Harkness stooped helplessly as Wanda drained every shred of magic from her, finally completing her transformation into the legendary Scarlet Witch. As Wanda's power peaked, Harkness stared in horror at the ungodly entity she'd unleashed. Scarlet Witch would then use her magic to imprison Agatha in Westview as the sitcom character Agnes. Despite the villain's pleas, Wanda remained firm and doomed Agatha to one of the most cruel fates in all of MCU. The events of Agatha all along. Agatha remained in Westview, trapped inside Wanda's spell for most of the next 3 years. In 2026, when the Scarlet Witch was killed by Doctor Strange, the spell finally broke, causing Agatha to see herself as the lead detective in a prestige crime drama. She would arrive at a crime scene where her former acquaintance, Herb Feldman, would tell her that an unidentified corpse had been discovered in their vicinity. They find a library card on the corpse, and Harkness notices that the victim's fingertips have been blackened. Upon further investigation of the scene of the crime, Agatha found a locket that she ended up keeping to herself. Agatha would then visit the Westview Public Library, where she asked Dottie Jones to identify the owner of the library card. She'd find that the card had been used to issue a book called Dialogue and Rhetoric, Known History of Learning and Debate, which had been stolen from the library some 3 years ago. Together, they'd find that all the other copies of the book had been burnt and destroyed. Later, at the Westview Police Station, Agatha is informed by Police Chief Phil Jones that the soil samples from the corpse had their origins in Eastern Europe. The investigation would then be joined by a new agent named Rio Vidal, who aroused great suspicion in Agatha. On one occasion, Vidal stated that the corpse had appeared magically, which led tensions to escalate further. Agatha would then have the secret locket analyzed by Norm Gentilucci, who found that the jewelry came from the later 17th century. Agatha would continue to grow more and more obsessed with the case. Agatha began decoding the mysterious book by writing out each letter of the book's name before being interrupted. But, well, you already know where this is going. Upon returning home, we find a mournful Agatha looking into her son's bedroom before being interrupted by Vidal. During their discussion, Vidal would ask Agatha why she hated her, but Harkness would struggle to come up with an answer due to her warped memory. Soon after this, Agatha would hear a clatter upstairs and discover an intruder in her house. Though the invader tried his best to escape, Agatha was able to catch up to him and arrest the strange man. When the intruder was brought into the police station for questioning, he'd ask for Rio Vidal. The young boy would reveal that he knew Agatha's true identity and claimed that he was after the road. However, when he was shown pictures of the scene, the boy claimed that these were just some pictures of flowers before breaking into fluent Latin, leading to further confusion. Completely rattled by this investigation, Agatha drove to the coroner's office to examine the corpse herself. She finds the morgue completely empty, but upon closing her eyes and remembering the details regarding the victim, the body appears in front of Agatha. At long last, we'd finally learn of the corpse's identity via a library card near the body's toe, which states the name W. Maximoff. Vidal would join Agatha in this investigation, proclaimed that the case had been closed. Agatha, still curious about the cause of death, stated that the Scarlet Witch had been slain and that the Darkhold had been destroyed. This meant that Agatha had been trapped inside the spell. This revelation causes Agatha to become unbearably hot, which is why she starts undressing. However, she'd only find herself in various outfits that she'd worn during the Westview anomaly, until she finally arrived at the final outfit she'd worn, Agnes. Vidal forces Agatha to remember her own name, and upon looking back at the library card, we see the name A. Harkness. This This realization seems to free Agatha from the spell. Agatha would suddenly find herself back at her old house, completely naked and no longer under Wanda's spell. She'd rush outside and ask John Collins about how long she'd remained in the town, to which he answered 3 years. Though Agatha has been freed from Wanda's spell, she seems unable to use her magical power, as the Scarlet Witch had rid her of all her magic. Cursing Wanda for taking everything from her, Agatha would help her find her new goal, to get back on top. Strange noises would start emerging from the rooms upstairs, and Agatha would once again find an intruder. This time, he's left tied up in her closet. Upon realizing that this is not a hallucination, she frees the guy to gain more clues, but at that very moment, a huge explosion shakes the entire town. Harkness is thrown back, and when she finally rises, she spots Vidal nearby and deduces that she is the attacker. Arming herself with a small dagger, she finally remembers why she'd hated Vidal for so many years. The two old friends turned foes reminisce about the past before engaging in a fight. Vidal is able to pierce Harkness's chest, which causes Agatha to bleed. However, Agatha is able to wrestle the dagger out of Agatha's hands. The two continue fighting for a while, and in the end, Vidal is able to pin Agatha down. However, she doesn't kill her, as apparently it's against the rules. Harkness pleads with Vidal to kill her only when she's at her best. She asks Vidal to let her regain her power, so that they can finally face off with all their might and settle their long-standing differences. Though Vidal would agree, she'd also inform Harkness that there were more people who wanted her dead. Before leaving, she confirms the existence of the Salem 7, who would undoubtedly be coming after Agatha. After recovering from Vidal's attack, Harkness would help the tied-up intruder to free himself. The intruder, known as the Teen, would ask for Agatha's help in traversing the Witch's Road, which would stop Agatha in her tracks. Agatha tries to discourage the kid by pretending the road doesn't exist. The boy prevails. She finally reveals that the road would end up killing him. We also learn that Harkness is one of the few people who actually managed to survive the suicidal quest. Though Agatha seemed completely disinterested at first, her opinion changes when she learns that it was the intruder who had broken her out of the spell. We also learn that the boy is unable to tell Agatha his true identity, as a sigil is preventing her from hearing the words. Agatha would eventually side with the teen and begin their journey by assembling a coven. Their first stop is a place called Madame Calderu's Psychic Readings, which is run by the divination witch Lilia Calderu. They try to trick Calderu into believing that they're a normal parent and child. The psychic is quick to pick up on the truth. Agatha would then drop the ruse and ask Calderu to join them on their journey towards the Witch's Road. Calderu would flatly deny the offer, but help the duo by using her powers to make a list of witches that'd end up in Harkness's coven. The greatest surprise, however, is the fact that even Calderu's name is on the list. Agatha would leave the reluctant witch with her address. They plan to meet at 5 in the afternoon. On the way back, Agatha finds herself oddly bothered by a crow on a telephone line, but they keep driving words Kale Care. Their next target is a potions witch, Jennifer Kale, who's using her powers in a pretty commercial manner. Still, Agatha and the teen are able to convince Kale by bringing up the lawsuit that her company is facing. Jennifer is forced to accept the proposal. Agatha and teen then travel to the Westview shopping mall to recruit the famous blood witch Lorna Wu's daughter. At the mall, they discover Wu's daughter, Alice Wu Gulliver, working as a security guard. In order to gain her attention, they pretend to steal something, which leads to a conversation with Alice. Like most of the other witches we've met so far, Alice is initially reluctant, but ends up joining the team thanks to Agatha and the teen. The group would gather for the first time at the Harkness residence, where they realize that they didn't have a green witch. Though the best person for the job would have been Vidal, Agatha approaches her neighbor Sharon Davis instead and gets the poor woman to sign up on the pretext of a party. The newly formed team would then descend to the basement, where they begin chanting the Ballad of Witches Road to open the gate to the road. The gate doesn't appear, which causes the rest of the group to blame her, baiting them into a futile course. Suddenly, the gate would appear out of the basement floor, proving once and for all that the legendary road had existed. But Agatha doesn't find much time to appreciate her victory, as Teen appears in the basement, claiming that he was being chased by the Salem 7. Out of sheer desperation, the team stumbles down the stairs and enters the gate. Just as Agatha enters the gateway, one of the Salem 7 makes it to the basement. Though Agatha succeeds in closing the gate after her, the brief encounter leaves her completely horrified. The group reunites and continues towards the road to reach its beginning. The coven followed Harkness onto the Witch's Road, marking the beginning of a new adventure. We learn that along the road, each of the witch's individual skills will be tested. Just moments later, Davis falls into some quicksand, which teaches the group a very important lesson: never step off the road. The first trial begins when the group arrives at a huge mansion along the path. Once inside, they find that their clothes have been changed, and a bottle of wine is provided for them to relax. However, the bottle turns out poisoned, and everyone who consumes it begins to suffer from swollen-up faces. Fortunately, Harkness is unaffected by this, as she pours her glass into a plant instead of drinking it all up. Jennifer Kale deduces that the group has been poisoned by something called the Alewife's Revenge. When the rest of the coven finds out that Harkness didn't consume her wine, they force her into drinking some so that they can make it out of the trial. trial. Kale proceeds to brew an antidote and instructs the rest to fetch her correct ingredients. Kale begins the process once the ingredients have been retrieved, but the mansion begins filling up with water. Agatha succumbs to a hallucination and begins to see a crying baby in a cradle. When she finally peers into the cradle, she doesn't find a baby, but the dreaded Darkhold. This leads Agatha to suffer from a breakdown due to memories of her estranged son. She snaps out of the hallucination, and Kale figures out that the final ingredient for the potion is Teen's blood. They consume the antidote, which heals them from the poison, but they lose their last member, Davis, in the process. Strangely, Agatha seems completely unfazed by this loss, can't even seem to remember her friend's name. The death of Sharon leaves a long-lasting impact on the rest of the coven. Meanwhile, Harkness grows more and more agitated as they can't go down the road without having a green witch in their coven. Agatha tries to argue against the idea of recruiting a new witch, but in the end, she agrees to summon a new one. Using the Teen's spellbook, they perform an incantation to summon the green witch. Moments later, Davis's grave opens up and Rio Vidal enters the road. Though Agatha is extremely against Vidal, she's held back by the rest of the members. Somewhere down the road, the coven spots a recording studio, which causes Alice Wu Gulliver to turn in the other direction. But Agatha is able to persuade the members of her coven to walk inside, and they enter a strange place where all their clothes have been changed to the 70s fashion. The trial begins when the teen puts on a record that plays an unholy, demonic sound, and Caldera is the first one to realize that they've all been cursed. Agatha figures out that it was Wu Gulliver who brought the curse with her once the attack began. During the fight, Agatha suggests that the only way to stop the curse would be to play Lorna Wu's cover of the Ballad of the Witch's Road. The coven performs the song and is successful in destroying the curse. After getting past the second trial, Agatha begins to panic about the teen who had been wounded during the fight. After recuperating, Teen asks Agatha what happened to her son, but the old witch just shrugs off the question and walks away. Later, Vidal and Agatha seem to have a romantic moment, but Vidal pushes Agatha away and states that Teen isn't really her son. Things get messier when Agatha detects that the Salem 7 have made it to Witch's Road. They manage to surround the group, which prompts Teen to come up with the idea of using Hexenbessen to escape. The witches succeed in crafting the magical broomsticks and take them to the skies, but are forced back down due to the road's enchants. Somehow, they make it to the next trial. They enter the Witch's Road cabin and find that they've all changed into pajamas. The blood moon outside helps Vidal to deduce that they're now at Agatha's trial. The group finds a Ouija board that explicitly tells them not to taunt the dead. Upon using the board, the group is approached by a vengeful spirit that identifies as Death. It claims that it wanted to punish Agatha. This leads to Agatha throwing the board away, which frees the spirit contained within. The group ponders how to punish Agatha, as it had most likely caused the trial to end. While the group is arguing, Agatha is possessed by her mother, who attacks the rest of the coven. Evanor tells the rest of the coven that they have to continue down the road without Agatha. Vidal openly objects to this idea, showing that she still has a soft spot for Agatha deep in her heart. In an oddly touching moment, Agatha asks her mother why she hates her so much. In response, the old lady proclaims that Agatha had been born evil and confesses that she tried killing her daughter right after birth. After some struggle, Agatha is freed from her mother's spirit by Alice, who casts protection spells around Agatha. But Agatha instinctively began absorbing Alice's magic, which drained her life away. She only stopped when the teen finally yelled her son's name out loud, but Alice had already been killed. This caused a clear conflict between the teen and Agatha, with the latter just wandering out onto the road all alone. The teen chased behind Agatha, knowing that she was slowly slipping out of control. When the teen confronted Agatha for stealing her teammates' powers, the teen claimed that he had no interest in the witches if it required killing. Agatha laughed at the accusations and told the teen that he was completely like his mother, Wanda Maximoff. This is where we learn that the teen is actually Billy Maximoff. Billy gains control of Jennifer Kale and Lilia Calderu owing to his innate magical prowess and proceeds to throw Agatha off Witch's Road. Agatha manages to climb back out and return to Billy. After confirming that Maximoff's sigil has been destroyed, she informs the boy that he's killed off Kale and Calderu. We also learn that Maximoff is trying to go after his brother, who might just be waiting at the end of the treacherous road. They continue to travel together, but a deep distrust becomes increasingly evident. This is where we leave the pair, but we can't really wait for the next installment in this riveting saga. The many faces of Agatha Harkness, alternate realities and diverse dimensions. As a staple presence in the Marvel Comics, Agatha has appeared in various forms across different dimensions. In this next section, we'll list all these unique variations of the character. Ultimate Agatha Harkness. In the Ultimate Universe, Agatha is actually a colonel working with S.H.I.E.L.D. As a high-ranking officer of the agency, she's equipped with Alpha clearance and works closely with the Fantastic Four. She believes they're programmed to be one of squandered potential and wasted opportunity. She eventually joins the Salem 7 as a couple of fights against Sue Storm. Agatha Harkness in media, cinematic and television appearances, TV appearances. The Avengers, United They Stand, 1999. Agatha made an appearance on the show in the episode Sorceresses, where she was voiced by Elizabeth Shepard. X-Men Evolution, 2000. Agatha appeared in 2 episodes of the show, where she was recruited by the shapeshifter Mystique to help Wanda develop and control her powers. Later, when Mystique was turned to stone, the teleporting mutant Nightcrawler sought Agatha's advice to help his estranged mother. In this version, Agatha was voiced by Pauline Newstone. WandaVision. This is arguably Agatha's most famous appearance, where she served as the primary antagonist hell-bent on stealing Wanda's magic. She first appears as an unassuming neighbor, but eventually we learn that she's actually the mastermind behind all the strange events in Westview. She's portrayed by Catherine Hahn, who might have just given us a pretty definitive version of the character. Agatha All Along. This spin-off series follows Agatha after the events of Wanda's vision. Catherine Hahn reprised her role, and it depicts Agatha's journey toward redemption after being freed from Wanda's spell. The show adds a lot of exciting lore regarding the character and serves as a detailed exploration of the magical side of the MCU. Agatha Harkness, Allies and Adversaries, navigating her relationships in the MCU family. Evanora Harkness. Evanora is probably one of the most prolific witches in the entire show, as she was widely expected to be the leader of the Salemites. The mother and daughter happened to share a pretty rocky relationship, as it was Evanora who led her daughter to trial in 1693 for stealing and practicing forbidden magic. We'd gain more insight into Evanora's personality along the Witch's Road, where she possessed her daughter, only to tell her that she'd kill her at birth. And you thought your family was complicated. Nicholas Scratch. Nicholas is Agatha's estranged son, who's only been mentioned briefly in the show so far. Though we really don't know much about him, it's certain that his loss bears heavily on Agatha. No matter how this season concludes, it's certain that we'll see more of Nicholas in the future. Allies. Rio Vidal. This formidable warrior witch shares an extremely overcomplicated relationship with Agatha, a former lover. She and Vidal split ways after Harkness took the Darkhold for herself. The two became bitter enemies, and Vidal is hell-bent on claiming a vengeance against Agatha. Despite the strong negative feelings they have for each other, there's definitely some love left, which becomes evident every time these two witches interact. The duo would grow closer to each other along the Witch's Road, but they never really made amends. As a master sorceress, Rio is just as powerful as her partner, but we've yet to see a full-fledged fight between the two. Enemies. Wanda Maximoff. Wanda and Agatha have been at each other's throats ever since the Scarlet Witch figured out that she was the mastermind behind all the strange occurrences in Westview. I mean, a town of mind-controlled humans is strange, but not as strange as Agatha later made the thing. Despite their differences, Agatha and Wanda still seem to have a lot of respect for each other's magical skills. Though Agatha ends up losing the encounter, it does provide her with a new perspective, and even sends her out on her own redemption arc. The Salem Seven. The Salem Seven is a mysterious coven that consists of the witches and children of Salemites. After the execution of the Salemites by Agatha, only the children were spared. Of course, an event like this filled the kids with resentment and an unwavering hatred for Agatha. Over the years, the kids gained great magical expertise and formed the Salem Seven. Strangely, this coven shares a hive mind that makes them incredibly great as a team. This formidable group still works out of Salem and consists of Vertigo, Coyote, Crow, Fox, Owl, Rat, and Snake. Due to their violent tendencies, the group has gained a pretty notorious reputation in the magical world. Wiccan Billy Kaplan. The Wiccan is a young practitioner of witchcraft, one of the founders of Agatha's new coven. He inherited his magical powers from Wanda and has been practicing on his own. The MCU version of events has confirmed that Billy is essentially Wanda's son, but we actually have no clue how that came to pass. We're certain that we'll learn more about the Wiccan as the story progresses, but he's really no doubt that he's one of the strongest magic practitioners in the entire series. Though Agatha and Billy started off as allies, Agatha's actions on the Witch's Road drove the pair apart. Despite the boy's young age, he's capable of performing a wide range of magical feats like telekinesis, mental manipulation, telepathy, and witchcraft. Needless to say, the boy is something of a natural. We're certain that the next few installments of Agatha's story will dive much deeper into Kaplan's past, but I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves. Marvel's verdict. Though the MCU introduced Agatha as a typical villain in WandaVision, we've now begun to see her as a troubled and complex character with various shades of grey. Though she can be ruthless in her pursuit of magical power, she also possesses something like a heart under her tough exterior. The MCU has done pretty well at fleshing out this minor character, and we're sure that this will lead to more Agatha appearances in both the comics and on our screens. But what do you think? Which version of Agatha do you like the best? Do let us know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay updated with all our marvelous content. Well, I guess that's it for today. But don't worry, because we'll definitely catch you in the next one. Until then, goodbye and have a great one out there.